Hello, welcome to Dive Beyond Sport. I'm Yona Night Wisdom.
And I'm Freddie Woodward. In each episode, we speak to athletes to discover their identity, value, and excellence. Dive. This isn't about medals, results, or records. It's about the people behind the performance. Today's guest is a dynamic mid-court leader, a former England Rose, and a Netball Super League captain, now using her voice to support athlete well-being, identity, and life after sport. Gabby Marshall, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you, Gabs. For anyone new to your story, give us a quick summary about kind of who you are, who Gabby Marshall is, and what got you to this point now.
Oh, it's a great question to kick us off. I guess for me, I almost have two parts to my life, I suppose, in terms of I've always been this high-performing athlete. I started playing netball when I was 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, actually, and kind of made my way through the pathway in netball. So represented my local county, my region, and then was really fortunate enough to kind of work my way through the England age group. Became a Super League athlete, and then was really fortunate to represent England as well. So I've always had that kind of side of myself. And then I think towards the back end of my career, I really wanted to kind of explore things outside of sport as well. So kind of naturally found myself in the athlete mentoring space. Was fortunate to work with, and still do work with, the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust, which kind of kick-started that journey, I guess, into the mentoring space, the athlete wellbeing space. And yeah, here I am now.
Yeah, that's super, it's super interesting. And I'm really excited to kind of dive into, I think, identity for you in particular, Gabby, because obviously that is one of our kind of key pillars, right? And I think, there's a few things that I want to ask about, but one thing I'm intrigued about is obviously, you said then you started at 5. And even for me, I think I started diving at 7, or just turned 8, and I thought like that was young. And something I've been thinking about is maybe one of the difficult things for people, perhaps like us, who start pretty young, but especially you, is your identity gets so attached to sport because you're doing it from such a young age. So it's not like, we spoke to Ali Jawad recently, he's a power lifter, but he only started powerlifting quite late. And I always felt the sense that, he was 15 or 16, I think. So I just wonder what that's been like for you, being just completely in the netball world from 5 years old.
Yeah, obviously it kind of has its pros and cons, I guess, in terms of we talk about those training hours to be an elite performer. And I think you're really ticking that off if you start at a young age, of course. But yeah, I think for me, it's all I've ever really known is being a netballer. And I think now that I've obviously had this kind of forced retirement upon me, which I'm sure we'll talk about, I'm really grateful that I took some time during my career to explore my identity, my values, what was important to me outside of sport, because I think I would be in a really difficult, obviously it is a difficult situation that I've found myself in, but I think trying to navigate that would be, so much more challenging if I hadn't done that work, I guess, throughout the kind of mid portion of my career. So yeah, I do think being involved in sport from such a young age is fantastic, but I think athletes really need to make sure they take time to either work with psychologists or just do that kind of exploration piece, I guess, of okay, well, this is me on a Saturday and a Sunday when I'm competing. I'm Gabby the netballer. I'm really invested in my career and my performance, but okay, what else is important to me? What else do I want to do? And yeah, take that time, because it's just only going to I think it benefits you during the season when everything's so intense to have that release, but also then obviously post sport as well.
Yeah. I mean, did you find it hard to take that hat off as a Gabby the netballer? But was it, even though it sounds like obviously you did a lot of things to re-engage in other aspects of your life and your identity, but was it difficult for you to kind of remove that hat, or did you?
Yeah, so I think how it kind of worked for me initially, I was studying physiotherapy at university. That was my degree. And my goal, this was when I was an England age group player, so I was England under 21s, and we were prepping for the World Youth Cup in Botswana in 2017. So I always knew that was my goal. It was going to be in my final year at university. And then my kind of long-term ambition then was to be a senior England player, so to be a contracted England player. In my second year, so it's a 3-year degree. In my second year, I was offered a senior England contract for during my third year at university. And the nature of most degrees, you're able to kind of take that opportunity and study and be a full-time Roses player. But unfortunately, with the nature of a physiotherapy degree, it was just impossible with my placements and how it would work. I kind of then had to make a decision. Okay, do I finish my degree, or do I take this dream opportunity? I was a kid that used to go and would get autographs from England players when I was younger. So it was a really hard decision, and I think I knew at that point, if I don't finish this degree now, I'll never finish it. So I thought, okay, just back yourself, get the degree done, and then we'll see kind of what happens after that. So when I graduated, I actually then kind of threw myself into being a full-time athlete for a couple of years, which was obviously a dream come true as a young kid. But I then had injuries and illnesses and things that kind of stopped me from working as a physiotherapist, because I was non-weight bearing. I was just constantly in a boot. I kept injuring my ankles. I was constantly in a boot. I needed the physio. I couldn't be a physio to somebody else. And so it was then around that time that I thought, okay, I need to do something else, because I'm injured. I can't compete. And that's when I kind of got in touch with the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust, started working for them as an athlete mentor, and I did my ILM executive coaching qualification, really enjoyed that. And I think the reason I studied physiotherapy in the first place was because I love helping people. That was it's something that I really enjoy. And obviously it's kind of a selfish thing, because you help somebody else, but you get a buzz from it yourself, just being completely honest, it's a bit selfish. And so I think then working in this athlete mentoring space has just been huge for me, because I can't help other people if I don't know about myself as well. So it kind of worked both ways in that sense.
That's brilliant. I want to touch on your last point there, where helping other people is kind of ultimately selfish, but it's a selfless way to feed your ego, which I think is absolutely fair, because that's what I'm doing now as a coach. And I was worried about how my ego as an athlete might inhibit my ability to be a good coach, because as a coach you need to just give and give and give. But actually, the more I give, the more I can potentially get if my athletes do well. So I can feed my ego that way. But what a mature and tough decision that must have been, to choose physio over the dream. Playing netball since the age of 5. That's an incredibly tough decision. And we're all faced with decisions in our athlete career. I had my decision for which country I wanted to represent and which way I wanted to go, whether I wanted to kind of separate from the British system and forge my own path, which was definitely more difficult. And it sounds like your decision was probably the more difficult one, would you say?
I think so. I don't think anybody would have questioned me if I'd have taken the England contract. As I say, I'd kind of been on that pathway for such a long time, and was kind of taking the steps and achieving the milestones to get to that point. I was captain in England at age group level, so that was the next progression and the next step. And there's always that element of, okay, well, if I don't, what sport's like, if I don't take this opportunity right now, it will be given to somebody else, and they might run with it with both hands, rightly so, and then the opportunity might not come around again in the future. But I found the physio degree so challenging because I was managing being an international athlete with the degree. I was going away on tours. I had a fantastic personal tutor we'd had to rearrange exams because I was competing in South Africa or in Australia or wherever I was. And again, you guys know yourself what it's like. And it felt like I'd done so much to get to that stage that I just needed to finish it. I needed to, if I didn't complete it, I just wouldn't have done it, and it would have probably felt like so much time and investment wasted. But yeah, of course, it was really, really scary time, because you ultimately, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to turn this down right now, and I back myself that in 12 months' time I'm going to be reoffered this contract. That's kind of how I phrased it in my head, was, okay, well, I'm just going to do everything I possibly can so that you can't ignore me in 12 months' time, and you almost have to offer me the contract again. And that's not the sort of person I am. I'm quite a shy, kind of humble person, to be honest, but I had to kind of just say to myself, well, this is what you're doing, this is the rationale, and it's the right decision, but you then also have to make it the right decision so that in 12 months' time you're sitting here, you're happy, you've got your degree and you've got the contract,
Yeah, 100%. That's an incredible mindset, and it just creates that personal accountability, like you said. Like you're the one that needs to put in the work to earn the contract after making such a tough decision, which is incredible. You mentioned that you were a captain at kind of under 21 level. How did being a captain at such a young age kind of shape who you are on and off the court?
Yeah, it was never really something that I kind of envisioned, to be honest. It just kind of naturally happened, I suppose. I think something that I like to pride myself on is my ability to kind of communicate across a different range of people. Obviously, in team sports, you've got so many different types of personality and just different characters, which is why I love team sports, to be honest. It's it's a cauldron of personalities, but it's something that I always thought I was strong at, I guess, was my ability to kind of meet people where they are at different levels of their journey or within the team environment. So I think, I wouldn't have, when I was younger, I wouldn't say that I was captain material. I think, like I say, I'm quite a shy, introverted person, to be honest. And I think the beauty of being involved in elite sport for so long, that it's kind of brought these skills out in me, to be honest. I think you kind of, sometimes you do get put in uncomfortable situations where you're handed a microphone and you're expected to do an interview, or you're expected to do a post-match speech or whatever that might be. And I think then those kind of building blocks from the age of 14, when I was kind of in more elite teams, to now at almost 30 when I've retired from sport, I think it's just the transferable skills and the qualities that it's given me it's something that I'm really, really proud of. And that's why I think it's amazing for kids to play sport and kind of find those qualities.
I mean, you said, just kind of referring to that, and then also referring to what you said about feeling uncomfortable backing yourself, but feeling like that was important. And then mention, so is that a message that you're delivering to younger athletes now as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think, a journey in sports, it's never linear. I don't think there's many people that they go from one point to another, and there's not kind of challenges and moments where they're going to feel uncomfortable. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of to tell young people that the journey is never linear, and you're going to be uncomfortable at times, and that's in sport and in life, to be honest. So I think it's nice for people to recognize that, and because I think when you're in the midst of something really challenging, sometimes you feel like you're the only person that's ever experienced this, or why is it always me? And like, I remember when I would get injured, you know, you'd think, why is this happening to me again? Why? This is the worst thing in the world. And of course it is at the time. But I think telling young people, okay, things are going to be challenging, but you're going to learn so much from these challenging moments that will then propel you forward, you know. And like, I'm quite a visual person, and I just think of like a wall, and the building blocks kind of just get stacked on top of each other. And yes, something challenging might happen to you, and you know, a brick might get knocked down, you might have a setback, but then the skills and the qualities that you develop during that time, you're going to add 2 more bricks back onto your wall, you know.
Oh, amazing. I mean, definitely the whole mentoring side of thing, I'd love to touch on more, because I think that's so powerful, and that's like I think a message that I really want to try and, you know, deliver through this podcast. But you mentioned injuries, so maybe it would be a good time to sort of to kind of start on that now. Obviously, it's something that's in every athlete's career, right, to some degree, but obviously it's something that's been, I think, probably particularly challenging for you. I mean, first of all, you mentioned like you're being in a boot. I mean, the first big thing was your ankle injuries, right? Yeah.
So just constant stream of ankle injuries, unfortunately. I think the first time that I properly injured it, I was probably 18 or so at university, and just quite a nice strong ankle roll, couple of ligaments, syndesmosis, you know, nice job. And at that point, I remember going to see the surgeon, because we weren't sure whether I needed surgery or not. And he said to me, "Oh, no, I don't think you need surgery, but you do have an extra tendon in your ankle." So I had an extra peroneal tendon on my ankle.
Wait, so your ankle had been stronger?
Everybody says that to me. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not the case. You'd think so. You'd think having something extra there would be a benefit, but apparently not. So because then when I first injured it, it used to basically, I damaged some of the retinaculum on the outside of my ankle, and then it would flick over my ankle bone, basically, because there was too many tendons there for the space, so it would move. So I'm getting a bit physiotherapy on you all here, but
you're saying some words I don't understand, but I'm going with it, and it sounds painful and uncomfortable.
Yeah, basically that's all you need to know. It wasn't the best, but so I was managing that kind of throughout my career, to be honest. I then rolled the ankle again, ended up with stress fracture in my cuboid, which is kind of notoriously difficult to heal. And
what's
then the third time, it's the cuboid, so it's just like the bone. It's kind of like in your midfoot on the outside. Yeah. So I ended up with a stress fracture there, which then I was just completely non-weight bearing for about 8 weeks. One of those things that you can't kind of do anything to. You just have to let it heal, wait it out, which is again frustrating. And then eventually we kind of decided that the ankle wasn't thriving. So we went back to go and see the surgeon to say, okay, I've tried injection, I've been kind of managing this pain on the outside of my ankle. I think maybe now's the time to get the surgery. But strangely enough, kind of 2 weeks before I was due to see the surgeon, so this is my left ankle, the right ankle, good as gold, never ever had any problems. The right ankle, one day after an England training camp, was just so sore. And I hadn't done anything to it. I hadn't rolled it, couldn't remember any kind of injury at all. And so we had to get a scan on it. Obviously, I could barely drive, couldn't put any pressure on it. It's really bizarre. And there was a huge cyst in my heel bone, like a big cyst inside my heel bone. And so the doctor called me and he said, "Look, I don't know what to say to you. I've never seen this before," which is obviously again really reassuring. And he said, "The good news is you're booked in to see the surgeon next week anyway. So we'll have to have a conversation with him Professor James Calder, he's like the goat of feet and ankle surgery. He's operated on, you guys are nodding your head. I don't know if you know him, but he's very good.
But
He's
you're seeing the
operated
right
on.
person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Neymar, like all the top footballers.
Wow.
You go into his office and there's like nice, lots of nice football shirts on the wall, and you think, okay, you know what you're doing. So I sit down in front of him, and then he goes, yeah, I don't really know what we do with this either. And so again, you think, okay, he was like, I've not seen many of these, but this is the plan is, I think we'll take some bone marrow out of your hip, and we'll inject it. We'll mix it with some paste, and we'll inject it into the bone, basically, to fill the space. But this was after we went back and forth for quite a while. He wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do. He spoke to his colleagues. It was a big palaver. But essentially, long story short, sorry, I've been rambling here now for a while. Long story short, I ended up having both my ankles operated on at the same time.
Oh my
So, yeah, which again, I wouldn't recommend to anybody. It was near Black Friday. I got a good deal, 2 for 1 on ankle surgeries. And yeah, thankfully, he did an amazing job.
Wow.
The left ankle kind of got that extra tendon taken care of. The right ankle, nice filled in bone, I guess. And since then, they've been good as gold. But obviously, that was. Just chaos, I suppose. And but somehow I found myself back on court 11 weeks after having double ankle surgery, which again, now in hindsight, probably was quite ridiculous. I followed all the medical advice and I was cleared to kind of play. But yeah, you look back at things like that and you just think, wow, like incredible that you kind of kept your head above water and got through it. But it teaches you a lot of different skills and different moments in your career that you look back on and you just think, wow, it's pretty cool.
I think going through all that builds a lot of character for one, and probably indirectly prepares you for what you then experienced, obviously recently, to deal with the chaos that is created by injury and to deal with the disappointment and probably a range of feelings. And obviously it's been very recent, so you're probably still going through the process, and retiring early wasn't ideal, but have you been able to find value in the circumstances of your retirement yet for yourself and potentially for other people in netball or other sports?
Yeah, it's really bizarre actually, because it kind of hits me at different points, like it sounds dramatic to think of it as grieving, but it kind of is, because you're grieving
it is.
like something that is like it wasn't how you planned it to happen, and you're almost grieving the ending that you never got, or the experiences that you didn't quite get to then fulfill. So I think in terms of value for me, it's just kind of taught me quite a lot of patience. I guess for the listeners that don't know the exact circumstances of my retirement, I had 2 quite serious concussions in the space of 30 days. So unfortunately, I'd had a previous concussion earlier in my career, and I think for people that don't watch a lot of netball, they think of this kind of non-contact sport. But
That's what I thought. Really?
And I think concussions are actually probably more common than people realize within netball. But yeah, so for me, the very first game of the season was kind of the challenge. Defender challenged me in the air as I was kind of receiving a ball, and hit my head on the court, I guess, the back of my head on the court. Did the return to play process. So obviously with concussions, it's quite strict in terms of the minimum 14-day kind of, you go on the exercise bike and you gradually build everything up. And so I was cleared then to kind of play again. And I think it was the third third game back that I'd had. So was a similar kind of thing happened. Was landing, trying to catch a ball, and taken out in the air, and just smacked my head on the court again. And I knew straight away that this one was quite a sore one. I actually kind of lacerated my lip. So initially I was panicking because I was lay flat on my back, and obviously the doctor and the physio come on straight away, and they're not letting you move your neck, rightfully so, to just make sure that that I didn't have a fracture or anything like that. But my mouth was just completely full of blood, and so I remember just thinking, I'm laid back here, and my mouth's just pooling with blood. So it's quite a scary time. I was stretchered to hospital. Thankfully, no fracture in my neck, but obviously a long night in A&E, kind of waiting to kind of get that all confirmed. And then, unfortunately, was just really unwell for probably 2 weeks. I couldn't really get out of bed. And then, had quite a lot of brain scans afterwards, and saw the specialists, and their advice kind of was a minimum 2 to 3 months kind of lay off from sport. But because of my previous history with concussions, they kind of said, obviously the ball's in your court, but things could be quite nasty if you were to hit your head again, And for me, it was too scary to kind of think of the consequences of if I was to get another concussion, what would that look like? Because I think within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I only just kind of now feel back to normal again. And bearing in mind, the second concussion was, I think it was the beginning of April. So it's been a while. So I think for me, again, sorry, rambling on a little bit, but for me, the biggest thing has just been patience. I think when you're in something like that, it's so different to an ankle injury where, I don't know, the stakes just feel a lot higher, rightly or wrongly. I think with it being your brain, the stakes do feel a lot higher, and you probably should take care of your ankles as well, a lot more than athletes do, because you do need that for later in life and your mobility and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's quite a scary thing, waking up every day and you just can barely open your eyes, your head's pounding, and you think, is this ever going to go away? That was the reality for me. So the patience that it kind of taught me in terms of just riding it out and riding the wave, I think has been huge. And even still, like I say, to this day, I have moments where I'll watch the girls play, and you experience so many different emotions that it's just kind of taught me that patience of just to navigate the difficult times.
Yeah, that's incredible. Concussions obviously concussion awareness and understanding has become much more prevalent in sport, and we're seeing it in diving as well. And diving's probably not a sport where people would think about concussions, but it does happen quite a lot. If you hit your head in the water, you're hitting the water at 33 miles an hour from 10 meter, concussion can very easily happen. So the medical team have been a bit more strict with the return to training protocol, as you said, that you went through. And I can't imagine what it was like going through it a second time. I saw the video of that contact, and again, it surprised me watching netball how physical it is and everything. But in terms of concussion in particular, what's the kind of message that you want to get out to netball, to other sports, after going through such a thing yourself?
Yeah, I think particularly for young athletes, it's like you say, that awareness piece of my story in particular is, unfortunately, it's probably quite far removed from the normal experience in terms of having to in the space of 30 days is very unlucky and quite uncommon. However, I guess if there's something a positive to kind of come from my experience, I think it would be, like you say, that awareness piece. I guess within netball itself, it's really difficult because there's rules in place in terms of players then get suspended for 2 minutes if there's kind of contact to the head. I think it's just it's a real fine line and in terms of challenging and competing for the ball. But I think as the sport becomes more like athletes are becoming fitter, stronger, faster, and rules that can be put in place then to protect athletes' heads is so important, because you think about sports like rugby naturally because they're a collision sport, but they seem to have more procedures in place that then protect the players and protect them, whether that's in terms of disciplining other players that have had a high tackle, or protecting the players from removal from the game for HIAs and that kind of stuff. So I think we're still quite new into this space, and as we professionalize a bit more as a sport, I'm hoping that my story, as unfortunate as it is to kind of be the guinea pig, can kind of trigger some meaningful change within that space. And even if it is just making the league and the medical staff kind of more aware of what the protocols are, then that's a step in the right direction, because unfortunately players do get knocked about quite a lot in training. My position actually isn't the worst for it. I think a lot of the time it's the shooters in the circle. Elbows are flying constantly in that shooting circle from defenders and attackers. Before, if anybody listens to this and I get roasted for saying that, but it works both ways. But yeah, I think just raising that awareness is so important, because at the end of the day, like, your brain is very important, and recognizing the signs and the symptoms of concussion, I think, is huge.
Do you feel like you're in, obviously you've not left in the circumstances you would have liked to, right? You're officially retired, but do you feel like maybe you're in a almost better position now to be able to say, raise the awareness and maybe make some of those impacts on the sport that if you're still, say, training, competing full time, you wouldn't be able to? Or has that kind of shifted the way you think you can impact your value on the sport?
Yeah, I think so. I think the stakes almost then feel higher because I haven't had that fairy tale ending, I guess, and I didn't even want a fairy tale ending. Like, I wasn't anticipating, winning the league and retiring, and otherwise I might have been trying to play until I was 74 or something like that. We all know, like, you don't get the dream ending all of the time.
Yeah.
But I didn't anticipate my last ever game being wheeled out on a stretcher into the back of an ambulance. That's not. And my little niece came to watch me for the first time, and so, like, one of my last memories is my 8-month-old niece, my sister, holding her as I'm being wheeled out on a spinal board. Like, that's not ideal when you've been playing a sport since the age of 4. But as I say, then you do then kind of feel, it stirs up more emotion inside of you, that you think, okay, well, like I say, if this unfortunately is quite a dramatic and unlucky situation that I've kind of found myself in, but if it then provokes meaningful change within the league, then I think all the better for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously it was, I guess, brief because of the circumstances of your retirement, but you did get to be part of NSL 2.0, the revamping of the Netball Super League, all about performance excellence, professionalism. For you, what were the key differences between kind of how it used to be? Obviously, you were at 7 Stars beforehand. They got cut, so your team was essentially removed. But then you were able to find a new team, fortunately. What was the difference for you, and how much further do they need to go to get to, the proper level of professionalism, of excellence that they are kind of looking for, I suppose?
Yeah, I think we're kind of taking the right steps towards the professionalization of the league. I think for me the biggest differences from previous years to this season was the contact time that we would have together as a squad. Previous years we would train together maybe on court 3 times a week, and then gym would kind of vary depending on the nature of the team, because people still had full-time jobs, or a lot of the team still had full-time jobs. It would be gym or S&C would be a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest, of who was available. People were managing their careers, and that would be, you would be then, if you weren't at the team session, you would be expected to kind of do that within your own time and trusted to do that. Whereas this season, there was just far more contact time, particularly at Birmingham Panthers, that every gym session, 2 to 3 gym sessions a week, we were all expected to be there. And similarly on court as well. Obviously, there's a level of, I guess, individual allowance, because again, people are still having to work. We're not at the stage where athletes are earning enough money from the league that they can't work. So there would be individual conversations, I guess, with the performance staff around certain sessions, whether people would then have to go to work or depending on the nature of their job, I guess. I know it's like some people had remote careers, but they would need to be in the office 1 day per week, for example. So then it would be a conversation around, okay, this week, the Tuesday is the best for you to go to the office, etc. So yeah, I think I do think it's heading in the right direction. I think the challenges, I suppose, are across the league. All of the teams operate quite differently. So if you have conversations with other players within other franchises, their training schedule and their expectations can look very different to other teams. And I think then that's quite a challenge when, if players are looking to move clubs, for example, and you have a career, it's kind of managing that then as you move. Like, for example, I know Manchester Thunder, their squad, the majority of the players have full-time jobs, so they can't do sessions during the daytime. It doesn't really work for them. I think they have 1 session a week on a Wednesday that's during the day, and a lot of them are in evenings, whereas at Birmingham we were expected to train a lot during the day, and it was almost a case of, okay, we'll find work that works around that, you know. So it's challenging, and I think the hard thing as an athlete, when you hear kind of professionalization, it's almost managing that expectations for the fans and for the athletes and for the organizations, because that word can have a very different meaning across the board. And I do think, from, if I look back, obviously I've been playing in the Super League for 12 years, the growth has been exponential, and it really is heading in the right direction in terms of the finances and the salaries that players are receiving, but it's still not full-time professional yet, and that then needs to be managed appropriately for players to thrive in all areas of their lives. Like we speak about identity on this podcast, and it's huge. It's something that players kind of struggle to manage and compartmentalize all those areas.
Yeah. I mean, what skills did you develop? You know, obviously, you know, you've succeeded in sport, but you've also succeeded in getting a degree and becoming a mentor and an ambassador and on all these different roles. What skills do you think were most crucial for you to kind of develop that and be successful in your life? What really helped you?
Yeah, I think initially it was actually asking other people for help. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive, I guess. And I'm probably downplaying some of the skills that I have naturally myself in terms of that kind of time management and organizational skills. But I do think for me personally, a big part of it was almost being open and honest and speaking to other people. Like, I think back to my time at university, and there's absolutely no way I would have got through that period of time if I hadn't have been just really on it with my communication to my personal tutor and just letting them know that, okay, look, this is, and I think the thing is with sport is you have a calendar of what the year could look like, but obviously depending on selections and injuries, etc., you don't know. So you almost have to go into a meeting and say, this is what the year could look like for me. This is the worst case scenarios that I'm going to be. I mean, worst case and best case, because it means I've been selected for these tours. But the worst case is that I'm not going to be here for this exam, this paper, this assignment. How can we manage that together, you know? So yeah, I think for somebody that's really, I'm quite a shy person. I've learned this ability to be able to speak to people and sit and record a podcast like this. It's not something that came naturally to me, and I think that's probably something that I think was huge to kind of juggle everything, is just the ability to communicate and speak to people, speak to your coaches, speak to your work. Excuse me. Yeah, just have those conversations.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you need to, I guess, survive in the sport of netball, as it has been for the majority of your career, where you have had to do other things. But you know, as you said, you finished your degree, then you went kind of full-time into netball. So you kind of took the step towards professionalism, I suppose, before the sport became professional. So like, were there any kind of struggles or like kind of misalignments with the different teams that you were at in terms of your approach versus their approach? Like, you know, did you want more than they could offer at any point?
I don't think so. I think it's always been, I think once England kind of introduced the Roses contracts that get offered, there was always going to be, I guess, not a level of discrepancy, but there was always going to be players within the squads that then might not need to work as much as players that were solely reliant on their Super League contracts, because obviously financially, if you're receiving money from England Netball and the league, regardless of what that figure is, like, because trust me, it's not huge amounts of money that we're talking about here, or at least it wasn't back in the day when I had that contract. You have two incomes then, so you don't need maybe to stress as much about where you're working or what you're doing. So I think that's been in the situation for a while across the league, is depending on the team that you're at, there'll be players that have those England contracts, so they are in a position where they could maybe focus more on their training versus the players that work full time. But I think sometimes the players that then work full time are just so diligent with what they're doing, because they have to be, you know, you have to be so organized with your time, and okay, well, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. here to do my gym before I go and teach for a full day at school, for example. But I don't think there was ever a time where the league couldn't kind of offer what you needed to, what I needed it to. I think I was very fortunate across the teams that I was playing in, that the coaching teams that were in place, or the management that were in place, were always quite flexible, because they would say, okay, well, if you want an extra training session, for example, there's this group of players that are available on a Thursday lunchtime, so we'll put that on for you. Or they were quite good at kind of working with what they were able to do, and I think that's a testament to the staff that are in place, is that they have to be so adaptable because of the nature of the squads. People are working full time, people are full time athletes, and you then just have to kind of work with the parameters of what's available to you.
Yeah,
absolutely. And obviously you mentioned, you know, some of the different teams you were at, Saracens Mavericks, Seven Stars, and Birmingham Panthers, right?
Yeah.
super fan.
Netball. be careful how you answer, because at risk of upsetting people, I don't want to say like which was your favorite, but like which team brought the best out of you, and can you kind of elaborate a little bit on why?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I get asked this all the time, and
Oh, really?
it's really challenging because I think without getting splinters, because I'm sitting on the fence, they all were just so important to me at different times. Like I think
Yeah.
Manchester Thunder, I'm a Manchester girl. I grew up in that pathway. I grew up going to support them, like
Yeah.
that was huge for me to get that opportunity to learn off some of the legends of the sport. You think of like Jade Clark and Sarah Bayman, Laura Malcolm, Beth Cobden, people that play in my position. I was just so fortunate to be in squads, learning and absorbing and just soaking up everything. And the coaching that I got there was incredible, with like Tracy Neville, Karen Gregg, Dan Ryan. It was, yeah, it's a dream come true, I suppose, as a young kid. But then moving to Mavericks, I studied in Manchester. I was so close to home that was then my opportunity to be okay. Like, let's leave home. Let's try something new. Let's grow as a person, in terms of off court life, and not having my parents 10 minutes around the corner to make me a Sunday roast or help me with my washing. But I do think 7 Stars for me was that kind of environment where I think I was a bit older and a bit wiser and had been around the sport for a bit longer, and we just kind of created this fantastic culture where everybody felt that they could be themselves. And I remember I did an interview really early on in the season, because although it was a previously established team, the season that I moved there and Joe Tripp became the head coach, we basically had a brand new squad. I think there was only 2 girls that had ever played there before. So we kind of rewrote the culture and rewrote how things were done. And this interview I gave quite early on in the season, I just called us a bunch of weirdos, because that's what we were. Like, it was a funny team, because at that point in my career, I almost stopped playing. Like, I'd kind of fallen out in love with the sport. I'd had both my ankles operated on not that long before. I wasn't playing very well. I wasn't really enjoying myself anymore. I'd been dropped from the England team. I'd lost that love for the sport, and Joe kind of almost pulled a few of us into this team that had similar experiences. Like, we were all a bit of a similar age, different players that had not quite kind of performed at the level they wanted to at different teams and had some setbacks. So it really could have gone one way or the other. It could have gone horrendously, because you've got a load of people there that maybe haven't quite had the best couple of years. But fortunately, it was, it's just such a fun. Yeah, I think we made top 4 in the second season that I was there. Excuse me. And it was just completely unexpected. We internally thought, like, we knew that we could challenge the top teams, but in terms of the league, we kind of we shook things up a little bit, and we just had so much fun doing it as well. So some of my fondest memories are at 7 Stars, definitely.
So then, okay, kind of taking that, all your experiences from the different teams and from being part of the Roses and captain and all of that. You mentioned a couple of times communication being something that actually was important and really helped you. But I kind of wonder, for you as a mentor now, from all of your experiences, what messages that you learned from that are you kind of passing on the most to the people you're mentoring?
I think it's really challenging, because it's really context specific, obviously, in terms of if I'm working with young people. A lot of the stuff I'm doing at the moment with the Dame Kelly Holmes Trust is with patients within children's hospitals. So for them, a lot of the conversations that I have, it's around just trying to get them to explore and do as many different things as possible. Because I think for me, being uncomfortable, as we spoke about earlier in the podcast, those moments where you feel uncomfortable is when you learn so much. So I think for a lot of those young people that I'm working with, it's just trying to kind of push them out of their comfort zone, and that obviously looks completely different for everybody, you know, like for me, it would be, maybe not so much anymore, but it would be when, like I say, somebody would hand me a microphone and they'd be like, okay, talk, you know. That's taken me a long time to kind of feel comfortable doing. But for these young people, it might be trying to play some sport in PE again after they've had a long stint in the children's hospital. Or it might be trying to encourage them to be, they used to really enjoy painting and they've not painted for a long time because they're embarrassed, you know, just anything, but just trying to encourage them. And for me, we spoke about it earlier on about feeling selfish helping people, but I learn so much from them as well, and it's such a refreshing thing to do, because they come to me and like they'll say, oh yeah, okay, so I wanted to try something new, so I signed up for 3 different classes this week, and I went to karate and I went to jiu-jitsu and I went to a painting class. And I think, oh wow, okay, like and it just inspires me to then want to go and try something different or do something new. I guess in other roles, when I worked at the University of Worcester, I then was kind of dealing with TAS athletes and more high performing athletes at that point. So it would be different messages across the board. I think for me though, a lot of it does come back to communication. For so many of these skills, it's if it's the young people at university, it's okay, well, how are you managing your support network? You know, like you've got access to tasks, so you've got access to a wealth of knowledge and experience in terms of all these different support coaches and physiotherapists and nutritionists and performance lifestyle. Like, how are you getting the most out of this? And that for me comes back to communication. And it's something that I've learned those skills around my questioning with young people or with athletes. Like, how do I ask them questions, or how do I get them to think differently about what it is that they're doing? And that reflection piece is so important.
Oh, that's lovely.
Amazing. Obviously I do some work with Dame Kelly Holmes Trust as well, and you know, I've been in that environment working with the young people in the hospitals, and it is really difficult because they're going through something very, very challenging, and you can give them so much, but like you said, what surprised me is how much you can actually learn from them, and how much you can take from, you know, sometimes just their positivity in some really challenging moments. It's like, you know, I shouldn't be complaining about anything because life is super easy in comparison. So yeah, that's fantastic work that you do. Gabby, where can people find you? Social media, anything else?
Yeah, I'm a bit useless, to be honest, with social media. I go through phases where I really enjoy it, and then I really, really don't enjoy it. So, Instagram, I try and have a little dabble with LinkedIn every now and again. But again, I have my moments where I think, this is good, this is productive, and then I really don't. So, to be honest, if you really want to find me, you can find me on some social media, but I don't know how much you're going to benefit from following me.
Well, you've taken some TV appearances recently as well, doing some commentary. So, you know, maybe that will be where people find you next season as well.
Yeah, and I know people will find value from, you know, your messages and your story though. So,
thank you. Cheers.
Yeah. Is there a final message you'd like to say? Final words before we close this main section?
No, just thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you both.
It's been awesome to hear your story in a little more detail, like kind of seeing you from a distance, but then hearing about the journey is, I mean, it matches up with what I saw on the court, you know, the kind of tenacity and willing to just push through anything. and work super hard. So congratulations for a phenomenal career. Guys, thank you very much for listening. This has been an awesome episode that I've really enjoyed, but we are not quite done yet. Gabby's going to stick around for one more dive. So if you're on Patreon, stick around. If you are not there yet, you can find the link in the show notes, and you can come and hear the extra bonus content that Gabby has for us, and anything that me and Freddie have as well.
Peace.